Further update in relation to our manhunt for Ezedi. Yesterday we released images of him being on Chelsea Bridge at just before 11:30 p.m. on the evening of the attack. The last 24 hours we have meticulously been viewing all of the available CCTV in and around the Chelsea Bridge area, and we've also worked with Transport for London in accessing the CCTV from their buses. It is our now main working theory that Ezedi has actually gone into the Thames from Chelsea Bridge. All of our work thus far has not seen him come off the bridge. We are in contact with his family in order to pass that news on and to provide the necessary information and support for them, because of course I'm sure they will also be very worried about what's happened to him and what he has done. I'd like to thank the hundreds of members of public who have come forward. That's been incredibly helpful. Our thoughts, of course, remain with our victim, and our thanks for the members of the public that intervened that evening and our officers who also suffered secondary injuries. Our Marine Support Unit will be carrying out some searches of the Thames, but as you can imagine, at this time of year, the Thames is very fast flowing, and our expertise and the experts from the oceanography departments that are supporting us would indicate that it may be some time, if someone has gone in the water at this time of year, for a person to surface, and sadly, they may never actually be found. Thank you.
So you've got a man with significant facial injuries moving through really busy train stations in London at prime time hours.
Yes.
He managed to get quite far. How is it that your officers weren't able to get him?
Well, we didn't know where he'd gone as soon as he fled the scene. So naturally, we used all of our available resources to quickly start searching for him. But as you can imagine, if someone gets down onto the tube without us knowing it, then it takes some while to be able to trace all of the available routes that he may have taken. We work very closely with our colleagues from British Transport Police, who very quickly were at the main terminuses with pictures and identification of who he was. But it would appear that he was able to get onto trains and make his way up onto the surface down in Clapham, I think.
Tell us about his behaviour on the bridge, BBC News.
So he has been following the Thames, as you will have known from previous CCTV. When he gets to Chelsea Bridge, his demeanour appears to change. I think I would describe him previously as having been walking sort of purposefully, as if he knew where he was going. He was walking at a reasonable pace. As he gets onto Chelsea Bridge, he does cross the bridge more than once, and then when he gets back to the centre, he appears to be moving from the railings back to the pavement and looking over the edge of the railings. So a distinct change in how he's been moving about.
So he was on the, you were looking for him for about 8 or 9 days.
Yes.
Why do you think it took so long to get to this point where you now believe what you believe?
Well, as I've previously updated, we've got hundreds of officers who are very skilled in manhunts, fugitive hunts, and following CCTV is one of those primary lines of inquiry. But as I'm sure members of the public would appreciate, when you're on the tube network, the possibilities of what lines you take, what stations you get on and off, and particularly if there are stations where there's more than one line, the permutations of where you can go are many and varied, and there are thousands of cameras that need to be watched and followed very carefully in order that you don't miss him. So that's very painstaking work. It has taken 7 days to follow him for about 4 miles and for 4 hours. But the hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage and the literally thousands of cameras that have had to be watched carefully, because if you make a mistake and you miss him, or you follow the wrong person, then clearly your inquiries are in big trouble.
You've said this is your main hypothesis now. What happens to the other lines of inquiry that you're following?
Well, we will still continue with those. It would be fair to say that the CCTV has obviously been a very main line of inquiry for obvious reasons, but there have been a lot of other inquiries being carried out, which has led to 8 warrants being executed across the country and other inquiries being undertaken. So whilst there is a very strong likelihood, probability that he's gone in the water, there will be some further inquiries to still continue in order for us to be as sure as we can of exactly what happened in the lead up to and following the awful attack that evening.
Can you tell us anything more about the victim?
Sadly, she remains in the same condition as she has been since the attack, in the care of the NHS, sedated and not able to speak to police. And our thoughts remain with her and her young children.
Do any investigations still carry on in Newcastle?
We are working very closely with our colleagues in Northumbria who have been excellent, and it has been a nationwide effort with British Transport Police, Northumbria Police and other forces who've had calls come in, potential sightings and potential leads. So yes, we will still be continuing further inquiries elsewhere in the country.
Does the victim know? You know, she says she's sedated. Does that mean she doesn't know what's the update?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your help over the last week.
Yes, thank you.
Been very good.
Massive.
OK, that was Commander John Saville there with the press briefing on the missing person. The manhunt now turned into a missing person of Abdul Ezedi, believed to have jumped into the River Thames. And I'm joined by Theo Chikomba at New Scotland Yard. Theo, people joining us on the show this afternoon. Can you bring us up to date? Dramatic developments now. This increasingly looks like it's turning into the search for a body.
Yes, well, the latest press briefing by the Metropolitan Police concluded around half an hour ago, in which they confirmed that their working hypothesis, the main one now, is that Abdul Ezedi fell into the river. Now, his last whereabouts were at the Chelsea Bridge. This is through CCTV footage, which they were able to see him on there at around 11:30 in the evening, a few hours following that suspected chemical attack. Now, there's been a question about, or an observation about his behaviour once he was walking on that bridge, seen going up and down, and then it's not quite clear whether some vehicles went past where he was last seen, and then he all of a sudden disappeared. But what they do say is that all the evidence at the moment say it's consistent with him falling into the river. Now, of course, in the last few days, they've been investigating not just here in London, but in the northeast, in North Tyneside, where raids were carried out at premises which are connected to Abdul Ezedi. This included a takeaway where he worked. Now, of course, they have also confirmed that they received around 500 calls and over 3,000 pieces of information, which includes from members of the public, which they have thanked everybody who has been in touch. Now, of course, the search is not just on land now, it's going to be on the water. We're going to be seeing marine specialists who specialise in this area going to be on the water in the coming days. But they do say, considering the weather that we have at the moment, fast flowing water, it could be days before they see any signs of body. And they said it could take up to 28 days before a body is seen on the Thames. Now, of course, they also confirmed that they'll be supporting Abdul Ezedi's family, and of course the 31-year-old woman and her children as well. She remains in hospital. She's currently sedated and hasn't been able to speak to the police, as she's still ill, recovering from the attack which took place last week. But for now, though, the investigation continues as the Metropolitan Police continue to put all the pieces of the puzzle to establish what's happened.
OK, Theo Chikomba, thank you for that update. And just to repeat some of that, if you're joining us on the show, Commander John Saville of the Metropolitan Police just gave a press briefing. The working hypothesis of the manhunt for Abdul Ezedi, the chemical attacker, last Wednesday night, 10 days after he went missing. The working hypothesis is he jumped off of Chelsea Bridge. The last CCTV imagery of Ezedi shows him going to and fro from the railings and found standing near them. So the working hypothesis now, he went over into the Thames, and Commander Saville said marine support units will now commence searching the River Thames, but also underline the fact that because of the time of year, the Thames is very fast flowing. The body could have been carried a significant amount of distance downstream. And in fact, he said the body may never be found. That's the latest. Abdul Ezedi believed now to have jumped off a river. And now it looks like the manhunt is turning into a hunt for a body.